Alright, let's paint up some Tyranid Genestealers. Tyranids were actually my first army way back in the day, and who knows where they ended up. Some guy's playing with them still now, somewhere, hopefully. But try to do this as a fairly quick speed painting article, because I know people out there have a lot of these to paint. It took a little bit longer than I would have liked, as normal. But mainly that's because it's surprisingly how much more work an extra pair of limbs takes to paint. But let's get going here, starting off with our standard black base coat, and starting off with a very heavy dry brush, using Vallejo Model Color Turquoise, Vallejo Model Color Dark Prussian Blue, and a little bit of Vallejo Model Color Black. Step number 2, we ditch the black, and this time dry brushing to slightly lighter, using only the dark Prussian blue and the turquoise. And then step number 3, we ditch the dark Prussian blue, and this time just going over it with just straight turquoise. Once again dry brushed, and once again this time slightly lighter with the hand, less scrubbing. So we're just trying to hit the edges and the highlights. Step number 4, and we are still working with just straight turquoise. However, this time we're applying it with a more standard method with a brush. Because it's being applied in this method as opposed to the dry brushing, it actually goes on a lot thicker. So even though it's the exact same paint, because it's being applied differently, it actually appears much brighter and lighter in color. So we are actually highlighting turquoise using turquoise. Working on the upper highlights now, and this time we've added Vallejo Game Color Squid Pink to the turquoise, and just applying the highlights where needed on some of the larger plates, which basically is pretty much only the areas, I guess shoulder plates you would call them, for all 4 of the shoulders. Trying to do that with adding a little bit of texture, so drawing a few lines there, just to make that area look a bit more appealing, adding some texture to it, so it looks a bit serrated, not just like a flat dinner plate. And then for the final edging highlight, adding white into that previous turquoise squid pink mix, and just hitting the very edges. Kind of going a little bit overboard with the highlights, because I do want this miniature to pop into something organic. Want to breathe a bit of life into it, make it a bit more interesting, especially since it's an alien organic. You can go overboard on those highlights and just explain away as it's alien. It's not supposed to look real. Now on to the fleshy bits, and for that we are using Vallejo Model Color Hexed Lichen, say it how you want, it's the purple stuff. So there's actually 2 different types of fleshy bits on this thing. There's the regular skin portion and that ribbed area along the back and venting off the legs in some places. Starting off with the ribbed area, we are very carefully dry brushing that, starting off with some Vallejo Model Color Purple. And then purple with a little bit of Game Color Squid Pink mixed in. And then finally, mainly just on the upper back areas, straight Squid Pink. For the heads, hands, and feet, we are using the exact same colors I just used on those rigid back areas. So I'm going to be omitting some of these steps since I just told you all the colors. but instead of dry brushing, we are applying it with a standard layering method with thinned paint. At this stage right now, we've worked our way up to the purple and the pink stage. And then the only difference comes in the final stage. Rather than the pink, purple, and white, I am using pink, purple, and Panzer Ace's light flush tone. That adds a little bit more color to it without paling out the skin too much. For the large head area, I applied the paint in little dots and just quickly wet blended them in to give you the idea of like not quite a see-through brain, but just to make that big flat area a bit more interesting. So there's some transition of colors there. Just wet the surface lightly, put a very thin layer of paint on it, and then while it's wet, add a few more dots to it, and then the dots will kind of just blend into the surrounding wet area. Last thing to do are all the pointy bits, the claws, and yeah, well, just the claws. Starting off with Vallejo Model Color Leather Brown. Then comes a layer of Vallejo Model Color Yellow Ochre mixed with Vallejo Model Color English Uniform. And we're just leaving that previous leather brown color as a dark line between the fleshy bits of the hand and the claws. To that previous mix, we then mix in more of the yellow ochre as well as some Vallejo Model Color Beige. And then we finish off with just straight beige on just the tips of the claws. I decided to go back to the flesh and add a little bit more color using light wash of Vallejo Game Color Red and Violet inks. This is a very subtle color I'm adding, but it actually has a key purpose here. If you're deciding to play Genestealer Cult, where they have the different generations and hybrid Genestealers and they start looking more human, you're going to have more colors that you add to those figures that are wearing armor and clothing and all that. And I believe at least studio colors are red. By adding a little bit of red here, you can transition that red and increase the amount of red in the next generation of Genestealers, and then even more red into the next one. So it's a unifying color, even though it's just very slight on the full Genestealers, but you can increase it as you go on to the other Genestealer forms. Just like I use the light flesh on the larger fleshy bits, you can then add more and more of that light flesh as you go on to the different generations, so those that flesh tone starts to appear more human. Here it's very subtle, it's not important. I'd only really do it if you were planning on moving into the rest of the Genestealer Cult generations. Also, talking about color transitions, I also decided to go back to the armored areas and give them a little heavier wash, just because it needed to be a darker, thicker wash in some of the recesses to add a bit more color. Not necessarily the same reason why I added the red to the fleshy bits, but just to make a bit more transition color, make it a bit more interesting. Not every creature is just one color. They have a variety of colors on them, slight transitions of color. So just adding a little bit of purple into it ties the armor into the flesh colors a bit better, and also just makes things more interesting. And there you have it. There is our finished Genestealer in the semi-speed painted variety. Again, an extra set of arms, so it's just a pain trying to paint this quickly. you have to hold it at so many different angles to get everything taken care of. Otherwise, fairly simple technique. We relied mainly on the dry brushing and a few washes to clean things up. So yeah, it's not that hard to do, even despite the other limbs. I was planning on doing some of the other generations, but unfortunately, timetables of things, I wasn't able to get to them. But because we included the red in the skin tones, if I was moving on to the other generations, I would concentrate more, use the purple as a shade for the flesh tones, and a pink as the base, and then mix with a little bit of lighter flesh tone color, the Panzer Ace's color, and then as we get to the full humanish ones, concentrate more on just that Panzer Ace's light highlight flesh tone, and as well as transition more of those red colors into the clothing and armored bits. But yes, those are the things that could have been. But until next time, thanks for watching.